And I could go ahead and tell you about Martin Luther King. I could tell you that he traveled over 6 million miles. I could tell you that he spoke over 2,500 times. I can tell you that he was a Nobel Peace Prize winner, the first black person to be a Nobel, or second rather, be a Nobel Peace Prize winner. I can tell you that he is seen as one of the greatest speechwriters and one of the greatest speakers this country has ever produced. I can tell you that when Life magazine chose 100 people that changed the history of the world, he was one of them. I can tell you all those things, but King would not want me to tell you that. King would care less about that because King already lived his life. King already passed 44 years ago. King wouldn't want me to tell you all those things. He wasn't interested in all those things. What King enjoyed was the fact that he gave this life everything he had, and he just did it. So here it is. Paul Laurence Dunbar has a saying in his poem, The Path. There is no beaten path. There is no beaten road. Excuse me, there is no beaten path to glory's height. There is no rule or compass greatness known. For each himself must cleave a path alone and press his own way forward in the fight. And the question you have to ask yourself, is there a fighter in you? Is there someone determined in you? Is there strength and courage in you? Punks need to apply when it comes to life. So here it is. You have an obligation to yourself to just do it. Not simply live in disbelief, but just do it. Not simply live in doubt, but just do it. Not simply celebrate King's life, but recognize the king and the queen in you and just do it. So we have this vision of King. As though King was always courageous. As though King was always strong. And we find it that when it came to the Montgomery bus boycott, that they approached King to lead us. King, you lead us. King, recognizing he's simply a 26-year-old preacher, is having doubts about whether or not he can lead out this organization, whether or not he can lead out this movement, whether or not he is worthy. He himself was afraid. But then King eventually says yes. But imagine if King said no. This right here, where we are surrounded by a multitude of races, would not happen if it wasn't for King. If he had said no, the concept of us joining in a college where we are multiple races, not just one black college over here, one white college over there, probably wouldn't have occurred. If King had said no, then many of you wouldn't experience the neighborhood that you live in. King has said no, then many of your churches will remain segregated. But King says yes. And the reality of it is this: what happens to you when you say no to your own greatness? Then your children are victims. What happens when you say no to everything that's inside of you? Then your family members and parents and siblings can't benefit. What happens when you say no to the intelligence that's inside of you? Then your environment changes. But when you say yes, you say yes. The trees will swing to your beat because they will testify of your power. When you say yes, the wind will be the chorus to your song because they will recognize something special about you. When you say yes, the concrete that you walk on will testify, greatness just walked on me. When you say yes, everything changes. So here it is. Night before he dies, King has what I call a Moses moment. I find it interesting that he selects Moses to be his reference point because Moses was so scared when God said, I want you to lead the Israelites. Moses said no like 3 or 4 times. God, you must be tripping. And eventually God convinces Moses, Moses, I want you to lead him out. And so what King does, King says that he has been to the mountaintop. And he has seen the promised land. But he says something intriguing. He says, I may not get there with you. Why is it that you have hope, King, when you recognize that your death is imminent? King recognized that day or earlier when he had flown to Memphis that the plane had delayed its flight because they recognized King was on the plane and they wanted to check the plane to make sure there were no bombs on it. King recognized that in Memphis that there were folks who were writing threatening messages. King recognizes that letters came to him, and we find out that it was from the FBI that would send him discouraging letters, hoping that he would commit suicide. King was so dangerous that government officials wanted to have him killed. Recognizing his time was about to come to his conclusion, he finds peace somehow, some way. And why is it that King finds peace? It's the same reason why there were those who allowed dogs to bite them. It was the same reason why there were those who allowed water hoses to be poured on them. It was the same reason that the innocent allowed themselves to be found guilty and allowing the guilty to be found innocent as they find themselves in a jail simply for protesting against injustice. And it's simply one word. And that one word is legacy. Legacy. See, you are a slave to time when it comes to your breathing. But time will never have more power than legacy. Legacy will always have more power than time. Because even when you breathe your last breath, and even when you speak your last word, and even when you think your last thought, your legacy, if you live this life correctly, will allow you to live forever. King died 44 years ago, but we still talk about it. King died 44 years ago, but we still celebrate it. And you have that power too. It'll be a travesty if you continuously celebrate King but don't do anything with the power you already have. You have the ability to have that legacy. Because I guarantee you, if you live a life that is passionate, and if you live a life that is powerful, then your children will talk about you. And your children's children will talk about you. And your children's children's children will talk about you. And your friends will talk about you. And they will tell their children. And the places you work will talk about you. And they will tell your children. And eventually, you will live forever, even though your funeral song has been sung. Even though the last prayer has been prayed. Even though the dirt has been placed on your own casket, you will live forever.